When the instructor announced we'd do the monkey bars as a warm-up, I knew I was going to be bad at this. This was bouldering. 8 years ago now, I spotted an ad for a women's bouldering class at a local gym, and on a whim, I signed up. Now let me explain a couple of things before I move ahead with this story. First, bouldering is a type of rock climbing. Instead of climbing a tall rock wall, or the gym equivalent, a boulderer climbs, you guessed it, a boulder, or the gym equivalent. So in bouldering, routes tend to go only as high as 12 to 15 feet. But what routes lack in height, they demand in strength, flexibility, and problem solving. Oh, and there aren't any ropes. Nope, no ropes. Outdoors, boulderers lay pads similar to cheap mattresses under climbers to catch them when they fall. Indoors, the floors around the walls are padded to make falling less dangerous. Here's the other thing you need to know. 8 years ago, when I signed up for this class, I had just started to make exercise part of my daily routine. So when I say that I signed up on a whim, I mean that signing up for this class was profoundly out of character. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and it was probably best that I didn't. I showed up for the first class nervous, but ready to learn. Before we even got on the wall, the instructor led the class, well, just me and the one other woman in the class, over to the Ninja Warrior-style obstacle course in the gym to warm up on the monkey bars, as I mentioned earlier. Now, this did not bode well for me. Even as a kid who was very active and athletic, the monkey bars were never my thing. As a woman nearing middle age who had just left a very sedentary era of her life, I was in way over my head. When we finally approached the bouldering wall, the instructor went through some basics about how to use your arms, toes, and core. Most importantly, she taught us how to fall safely. Then she pointed out a beginner boulder problem, the easiest one in the gym. Now, I should say here, too, that in bouldering, routes are called problems, a not-so-subtle nod to the puzzle of it all. My classmate went first, and she made it about halfway up on her first go. Then it was my turn. I perched my toes on the first footholds and gripped the holds designated as the starting point with nervous fingers. I do not remember how many moves I made on that first attempt, but it wasn't many. I didn't make it as far as my classmate, and I wouldn't make it up the whole problem in that first class as she did. When I left the gym, I could barely grip the steering wheel to drive home. My forearms and fingers felt like jelly. Even though I had proven to be a completely incompetent and ungifted climber, I was excited to go back the next week. In the second class, I made some progress, but ultimately still didn't make it up to the top. Undeterred, I finally prevailed in the third class. I'm Tara McMullen, and this is What Works, the show that rethinks work, business, and leadership for the 21st century economy. Today, I want to talk about the embodied experience of competence and the ways we try to make up for its lack in our lives and work. At the gym I climbed in, the bouldering wall is set up so that topping out, that is finishing, a problem requires the climber to not only reach the top handholds, but to climb over the top of the wall itself and drop down onto a platform a few feet beneath on the other side. So when you finish the route you are climbing, you can literally peer back over the edge of the wall and see just how far you came, literally and metaphorically. Add to that view a rush of adrenaline and dopamine, and you've got a recipe for embracing a whole new identity. As my climbing instructor later confirmed for me, I started out as an unpromising student. She was a bit surprised that I stuck with it, as was I. But getting past that first seemingly impossible obstacle was a turning point. I made that climb once, and I could do it again. I went from being an unpromising student to being one of the top women climbers at my gym within a year. I started climbing the same problems my instructor was working on. Later, I would actually teach that women's bouldering class that got me started. I've often said that bouldering taught me how to enjoy being bad at something. Until that point, I'd been one of those people who hated to do anything that they're not good at. And by hated, I mean I just didn't do anything that I wasn't good at. Of course, that means that the list of things available to do is pretty small and tends to get smaller as one loses competency in activities one no longer practices. Philosopher Kate Manne recently wrote of her Summer of Strategic Incompetence. Manne took up strength training and gardening, two things she was, in her words, supremely incompetent at. She did it because they were activities that interested her, and also because she wanted to experience and demonstrate her incompetence to herself and see and feel herself gradually getting better. Toward the end of her piece, Manne delivers a bit of reflection that I completely and utterly empathize with. Quote, "In seeking out a new hobby, I had to make a slightly confronting admission. I would rather experience growth as a beginner than regression as a more expert practitioner." She contrasts her experience with gardening and strength training with how she feels when she sits down at the piano, an instrument she was once very competent at, but has since grown rusty. For the record, I probably shouldn't say that I empathize with Manne here, because aside from the gardening, this is my exact experience. She continues, quote, "The gulf between me then and me now reminds me how fleeting fluency can be, how skills live in porous silos. Finding fresh sources of beauty and with them, new and unfamiliar aspirations has hence been a balm." I'm not currently climbing. I haven't actually climbed since 2021. The reasons include some COVID denialism, misogyny, and poor management at my gym. But my sense of what my body is capable of is still mediated through the muscle memory of reaching the top of the wall again and again and again. I've kept up with strength training, but I know that if I were to try to squeeze my toes back into my climbing shoes, making it to the top would be a struggle. However, when I imagine that scenario, I don't feel the frustration I feel when I sit down at the piano or try to play a scale on my trombone. I don't actually remember being bad at those things. Of course, I had to have been at one point. But I do remember being a completely incompetent climber. And that memory helps to remind me that I enjoyed bouldering when I was topping out difficult climbs as much as I did when I was falling off the easy stuff. Climbing demonstrated to me that I had no idea what my limits were until I tested them. But most importantly, it showed me that falling down was a critical part of figuring out how to get to the top. Bouldering as a discipline is all about getting back on the rock. Whether you fell on your previous attempt or sent the problem you've been working on for a month. You practice, learn, recoup, and try again. You succeed and seek out your next challenge. Sometimes you climb the same problem over and over again simply because you like the shapes your body makes as you make each move. Falling is part of that practice. But so is success. Crushing a challenging boulder problem is a rush. Yet it's what happens on the wall or the rock that keeps you coming back for more. We love to talk a good game about failure being a necessary prerequisite of success. We're told to celebrate the setbacks, to fail better and fail faster if we want to accomplish great things. And I'm not here to disagree with that, simply to point out that whether you're talking about failure or about success, you're focusing on a fiction and you're missing the best part of the story. Projects, initiatives, and goals come and go. We can label their ends with words like failure or success, or we might take a more nuanced approach to describe what we accomplished or didn't. Regardless of how we frame units of work, the work continues. Whether that work is your job or business, whether it's parenting or partnering, whether it's climbing up a boulder or paddleboarding on a mountain lake, the work is the best part. That's not to say that all work is enjoyable, but it's in the work that we create the spark of meaning, the fizzle of richness so often missed when we focus on the beginnings and endings of things. In the winter of 2018-2019, I came down with the flu. It was the sickest I'd ever been in my adult life. That is, until I finally got COVID in late 2024. During the long days of body aches and sore throats and sniffling, I watched documentaries. This was shortly after the release of Free Solo, which documents Alex Honnold's no-ropes ascent up the sheer face of El Capitan in Yosemite. If I couldn't climb myself, at least I could watch one of the best climbers in the world do one of the most batshit crazy things that anyone has ever attempted. The film climaxes at the moment Honnold hoists himself up on the top of the mountain. Because of course it does. The ending was never really in doubt. Honnold's accomplishment was relatively old news at that point. And hell, he was alive, so that meant he was successful. So while the film plays at the will he or won't he dynamic, the real appeal and the bulk of its runtime is his preparation for that one climb. The film elevates the years of training, study, and mental gymnastics he embarks on to make his success possible. Free Solo belongs to an indistinct genre of media lovingly referred to as competence porn. Competence porn is media in which someone is doing their job, loosely defined, exceptionally well, often using niche skills or uncommon expertise. The term was coined by TV writer John Rogers. And as Rachel Ayers describes for Reactor, he wanted a shorthand way to talk about the very specific kind of satisfaction that we feel when watching folks competently handle complex situations using the kinds of specialized skills and expertise that we can all appreciate. Competence porn stories incorporate failure and success, but it's the work itself that they elevate. The 2021 documentary LFG tells the story of why and how the U.S. women's national team sued for equal pay. Like Free Solo, there's an understandable emphasis on the wins and losses along the way. But also, like Free Solo, there is careful attention paid to the work of professional women athletes on the field or court and off, as well as the work of building not only a legal case, but a public outcry. The Grind shares top billing with the celebrity athletes the film follows. Smaller screens play host to competence porn too. YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram are full of it. I asked Sean about his favorite competence porn, and without a moment's hesitation, started to tell me about the pottery videos he watches. Oh, and the knitting videos, and machining, woodworking, and bookbinding videos. Some of these videos cross over with the how-to genre, but their primary purpose seems to be entertainment, the spectacle of watching people do things really, really well. Competence porn is a good term for this type of media because it is porn. It's all sensation, no feeling, to paraphrase Audre Lorde. Competence porn scratches the itch we have for being present, attentive, and ultimately skillful in whatever work we're doing. but it can never substitute for the richness of the real thing. Lord contrasts pornography with the erotic. The erotic, she writes, is a measure between the beginnings of our sense of self and the chaos of our strongest feelings. It is an internal sense of satisfaction to which, once we have experienced it, we know we can aspire. For having experienced the fullness of this depth of feeling and recognizing its power in honor and self-respect, we can require no less of ourselves. Following Lord, Bell Hooks writes about the role of the erotic in the classroom. Hooks writes that we can understand the erotic as a force that enhances our overall effort to be self-actualizing, paralleling the psychoanalytic framing of Eros. She focuses on the erotic as a passion uniting theory and practice, knowing and doing, a force that transcends the mind-body split that typifies much of white Western pedagogy. So this term, competence porn, got me thinking about what it is that we're really craving. What is the feeling that we're looking for in all of this sensation? And so while there is plenty of competence porn in the media today, what we might truly yearn for is an erotics of competence. We crave the depth of skillfulness and execution that can't be fully appreciated when we focus on beginnings and ends, failures and successes. We crave the erotic presence of process, the feeling of being in the middle of a thing. Erotic competence is embodied, alive with and attentive to the minutiae of pulse and breath. Competence porn depends on the expert, the master, the player at the top of their game. But an erotics of competence is available to anyone and everyone willing to immerse themselves fully in their work, broadly defined. Competence porn does indeed elevate the work, but it may place it so high as to seem unreachable. An erotics of competence makes the richness of work well done accessible to anyone who would seek it. Competence porn trades in the currency of climax, while an erotics of competence invests itself in materiality, pleasure, and rhythm. The rise of competence porn in both traditional media and new media might be due to the inaccessibility of erotic competence in our own lives. We reach for the spectacle of skillfulness because our opportunities to embody skillfulness are constrained by the imperatives of efficiency, mass production, and urgency. Borrowing from Guy Debord, competence porn shows us a world that can no longer be directly grasped. It is, quote, the bad dream of a modern society in chains, and ultimately expresses nothing more than its wish for sleep. The spectacle is the guardian of that sleep. Now look, I love competence porn, so there is no kink shaming here. I love watching people do things they're really good at, whether that's laying concrete, power washing a deck, preparing a meal, fighting for equal pay, or climbing up a sheer rock face without ropes. I will not be giving up this habit anytime soon. But I've learned that if I don't find ways to exercise my own competence, I can't be fully satisfied. If I focus on successes or failures at the expense of process and the profound imminence of doing the damn thing, I'll always be chasing the next high. That's what bouldering taught me, even if I didn't know it at the time. If you want to communicate with more clarity, create more persuasive messaging, and stand out from the crowd with rigorous thinking, check out Making Sense. Making Sense is my 8-week interactive workshop that walks you step by step through creating media that helps others make sense of the world. Whether you're a writer, podcaster, creator, academic, marketer, or any other kind of media maker, you'll learn new tools for producing content that offers others some relief from the confusion and frustration they feel. I'll help you identify the ways that you already make sense for your audience or team members, stakeholders, or students so that you can create articles, videos, podcasts, white papers, or social media posts that make a bigger impact. To get all the information on Making Sense, go to makingsense.fyi. That's makingsense.fyi. Today's episode was written, edited, and produced by me, Tara McMullen. What Works is a production of Yellow House Media, a boutique audio and video production studio that turns meaningful ideas into remarkable content. What Works is produced on the ancestral homeland of the Conestoga and Susquehannock people, and the Yellow House is located on the lands of the Salish and Kootenai peoples.